Double check the slides is showing up correctly for
Yes.
everyone. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Well, good morning, everyone. Let's get started. So, welcome to our program year 22-24 New York State AmeriCorps PDC section number 3. And this section, we're going to go over criminal background check, National Service Criminal History Check, NSCHC. Before I start, I do want to apologize if you hear some cat meowings in the back. That will be my cat. During my time at the commission's office, I had a couple lengthy chat with him about criminal background check and his opinion at the time. So if he does become loud, I apologize upfront about it.
Thursday.
She was out.
I think
And-
she's out Monday,
All right,
Tuesday,
so then
Wednesday.
Thursday.
Okay, yeah,
I
I'll make a note of that.
Go ahead, Cooley. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Eric. So let's get started. So some of you guys might be very familiar with this topic because this is a requirement since the beginning of AmeriCorps. Some of you may be new to the AmeriCorps world, so this is kind of like a new to you. But regardless, there are some materials we're going to cover, both the basic regulation requirements, so it's good introduction for folks that is new to the AmeriCorps world. And we also, in the second half of the presentation, we're going to go over there is a new transitions, not on the rules, but rather on the vendor that does the criminal background check. There is a transitions happenings currently right now as we speak. And so we're going to go over some fine details as to how it impacts you. So so first of all, let's go over the basic requirements. What is required of National Service Criminal History checks? Let me see. Okay, I need to click mouse. So National Service History check NSCHC, it is required for all everyone that is in a cover positions, and cover positions including any employee, any AmeriCorps members, participants who serve, receive a salary, receive an education award, receive a living allowance, or stipends under the AmeriCorps grants. Even if the activity doesn't involve service with vulnerable population, this was a change from the rules a couple years ago, must undergo criminal background, National Service Criminal History Check, NSCHC, prior to beginning of their employment or service. Even if the entire of their funding is paid from just solely from grantee match, this requirement still applies as well. So even if somebody is just on the grantee match, an executive staff, no matter how little time they put on there, they're required to undergo a criminal background check. There are a few exemptions in that we'll go over in a little bit, but this is kind of the basic requirements. Anyone that is in a cover positions required to have their NSCHC complete at least a day before they start their employment or service. Now, so this kind of go over in depth a little bit more. I want to, in the next slides, I'm going to show, maybe sometimes it might not like kind of register with you right away, who might be in a cover positions. So this is a, let me see, this is a budget narrative. You might or might not have seen it from eGrants. This is kind of directly taken from eGrants. So we have a couple scenarios here. We have, let's say, a program director who, work 100% on of his or her time that is on the AmeriCorps grant, and the entire salary of the line is paid with federal share. There's a program assistant that is, working 100% of his or her time on the grant, but the salary is split, let's say 50-50 between grantee share or federal share. There are a couple staff that is only spend a portion of their activities of their time on the AmeriCorps grants and pay entirely out of grantee share. And even there is some executive level, they may be need to require to attend a meeting, once on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, things like that. And then, but so because the amounts is very little, and we just simply put them on a grantee share. However, in short, you might feel like there's just a lot of money. Do we really need to go for a criminal background check? Because in some degree, the check is costing more than the salaries line at this point. But the NSCHC requirements actually applies to everyone that is on the budget, as long as their salary is on the grant, no matter how tiny of a portions of it, as long as they go on the personnel line, they are required to go through a criminal background check NSCHC. Likewise, anyone that is enrolled as a member, and quite frankly, before you will go on we'll explain it a little more in depth in the next sections of today's training. But before you hit enroll of any member, whether they have or without living allowance, you are required to certify you have completed the NSCHC before the member even started. So anyone, so in short, anyone that is listed as on your budget under the personnel line, or anyone that you're claiming on the personnel line will be considered a cover positions. Any AmeriCorps members enrolled that will be receiving an education award with or without living allowance will also be considered in the cover positions. So those are who are in the cover positions. And I'm gonna go over, there are some few exceptions. So three main ones that we're gonna go, you might encounter a little bit more, is that anyone who is under the age of 18 on the first day of service, they're not required to go through a criminal background checks before their enrollments. And anyone, their entire activities is included in the indirect cost of the grant. Now, so I want to go back to last slides a little bit. So if you look at the in terms of budgeting perspective, if you look at the accountants and the CFO, instead of budgeting them under the personnel line because the time spent is really minimum, it's not really their sole functions or the primary functions, the amount really should be budget under indirect costs instead of under a personnel line. But that is probably, James is going to go over a little bit more in depth in the fiscal training, later on in the next sections. But let's not go too deep into now. But if there's any staff that you're charging under the indirect cost line, they are exempt from the criminal NSCHC as well. And any staff that is working on the fixed cost or planning grant, they are also exempt from the NSCHC. So those are some really quick details as to who is what is considered a cover positions. Let me bring up the chat to monitor the questions while we are at it as well.
I'm not seeing any questions so far, Cooley.
Yeah, just want to bring it up on my screen. So just in case. Bear me one moment. Okay, so once we know who is required to go undergo a NSCHC before they start, now we're gonna go over the NSCHC requirements as required by the regulations a little bit. So all NSCHC has a three-part components. They are, the first one is NSOPW, the National Sex Offender Public Website Check. The second check is what we call a New York State check, which we'll go over in a little bit. That is not necessary, not saying not required, it's still required, but it's not necessary for the New York State residents. You don't have to do a separate New York State check. And then lastly, the FBI check. Now, by removing the barriers in the middle, the state check, essentially, for majority of the cases, as long as you complete the NSOPW and the FBI checks, is in essence, you are golden. In rare occasions, if a person applied to your program from out of state, then you might have to do an additional state check, which we'll also go over in a little bit. But for majority of our members and staff, if they live in New York, at the time they apply to your programs, then they are considered, and then two-part check is kind of golden on that. Okay, so let's go over one check at a time and how to get them done correctly. So let me first start with the NSOPW, the National Sex Offender Public Website. Now, there are two ways to get it complete. However, since program year 2023, last program year, we are starting to require all programs to use TrueScreen to complete the NSOPW. We still reserve the NSOPW.gov method as extreme, emergency cases, as situation, if there's some extraordinary scenarios happens. But for the most part, we do require all programs to use TrueScreen to complete the NSOPW. Some basic informations. The check is gonna cost $750 per check. Now, this amount should be included in your AmeriCorps budget. So it should be part of your budget, so it's covered by AmeriCorps in a sense. Now, what they do is that they will obtain all the required documentation. They will be processing the verification checks for you. However, there are two things that they are not really responsible for. First of all, they cannot control the timeliness, as in when do you submit the request. As in, if you submit the request late, there's no magic they can do to backdate your NSOPW timeline. So timeliness is kind of responsibility on your end. And the other function is that once you receive a clear result from the from TrueScreen regarding the NSOPW check, just the result of clear is not suffice. You will also have to go into the portal, look at the result, and then mark a comments, what we refer as adjudications, which we're gonna have a couple screenshots after this to show you how to do adjudications. What I'll say from the last 2 years, my experience with adjudication has been much better for our programs. I don't recall there are any right-of-way scenarios in the last year that a program, is considered, the NSCHC is considered non-compliant because adjudication was missing. I mean, granted, we haven't looked at all of them, but it has been much better compared to years ago. Because when they first started TrueScreen adjudication is a step that is oftenly missed. So make sure, while we'll go over a little bit in slides later on, so make sure you submit the request timely before the members start. I'll say a couple days and then make sure it is adjudicated at least 1 day before the member starts his or her service or the staff start his or her employments. And once again, while we still keep the NSOPW option at the side, in case of emergency. But generally speaking, we do expect all programs to use TrueScreen. And if there is a time that we have to come across using nsopw.gov website to do it, I call it manually. In that case, I will strongly recommend you reach out to your program administrator at the commission office just to make sure it is done correctly. It should be kind of happens on a very rare scenarios on that. So next slide, just kind of go over. So when you gonna go over how to sign up a TrueScreen account on the process. So first of all, you want to go to their website, https://applicationstation.truescreen.com. And when you click on sign up and then set up and register your account, login password, and then you'll be asked to enter an agreement code when you set up the account. The agreement code, it is CNCS, capitalized, and then agreement, one word, and the A in the agreement is also capital. And then at that point, once you go through that agreement part, you create account. They will also be asking to include a couple of forms. I do believe they also ask for like a letterhead from your agency in the event if they have to send out letters on your behalf. And then you'll get your login for the TrueScreen, and then you can log into TrueScreen through https://mytruescreen.com. And make sure to take the training in case if you are not familiar how to maneuver within the portal. For the most part, it should be straightforward, but but taking a training never hurts. Sometimes the portal could sometimes just not working properly. For example, browser issue, it might not function in a specific browser, we never know. So it's better to take the training to know that what you should be looking at and how it should look, if it functions correctly. So that is regarding how to sign up a TrueScreen account. And next, so this is so once you when you go inside TrueScreen, unfortunately, I don't have the access to take up a screenshot on in terms of how to request a check because on our account is only monitoring account. I actually don't have access to do a how to request check, but there are resources for it. I can go over it in a little bit. So when you receive a check, this is the check that you're gonna receive. I'm just kind of redact some of the information. Now, I just want to emphasize this is a screen for, while it says pass and green light, now it's just a report. Now, like we previously mentioned, just a clear report does not suffice. You also make sure that you have to adjudicate the clear result. By adjudications, which means somebody has to look at the result and then, had like a written confirmation that, has been reviewed. So, and if you go to, so once you open up this page, you can go back to TrueScreen, and on the right side, there is a button that says adjudicate this case, or I think adjudicate this report, something like that. And when you click on it, it will go to a different page. And then in TrueScreen, you will see those little options that you can do a drop down. And in the drop down, it's going to give you a couple options that says pass or not pass. I think it's just 2 options. Right. And then you can enter a note. You can, enter, will simple just say pass or anything that, you like to put, put the information for. And the main thing that we look at when we look at criminal background check compliance, we go to the adjudication history. Now we look at the action date. Now the action date is when you enter, the information about, you click on adjudication. So that is the timestamp for when adjudication is done. It will also have performed by, so it will be the name, hopefully a staff by. So we have the name, we have the timestamp, and we have the decisions, which is adjudicated status as a pass. So those are the 3 required components to be considered a eligible adjudication. So with those 3 information, then adjudication is finally complete. Then we are good to go on this one NSOPW. So that is the how do you maneuver in TrueScreen. A couple quick slides for NSOPW. And we're gonna go over the FBI check next. Okay, no questions in the chat so far. So now, for right now, I'm still going to talk about FBI checks through the purpose of Fieldprint. Now, Fieldprint is going away in November 30th of this year. So between now to November 30th, I still want to kind of explain Fieldprint as is, and then like I said later on in the section, I'm going to explain the transitions a little bit as well. So if we recall a little bit earlier, we said there is majority of the members or staff only requires to go through 2-part checks, which is the NSOPW and the FBI checks. So we are coming to the FBI checks. For FBI checks, you can request them or schedule them through fieldprintcncs.com. The check is $28.75 as of right now, to the best of my knowledge. Similar with TrueScreen, it is your responsibility to make sure the timeliness is done, correctly on or before the member has started or the staff has started. They also have an adjudication component, which is very similar to TrueScreen, where you go into the portal, you click on adjudicated, and then they will record your account name, which is your name and the date. So timestamp, decisions, and the name, program staff name, those are the 3 components required for adjudication. So they pretty much does it as long as you do it inside the portal that is required. Starting from last program year 2023, we require program to use Fieldprint to complete the FBI check. There is another options, which is AmeriCorps has designated repository agency. I do believe for our new state, it is our DCJS, the Justice Center, Division of Criminal Justice Center, for a program that is kind of new to New York State. To the best of my knowledge, most rarely does our program use that options to complete the FBI checks in the past, because it's unfortunately it takes a little bit longer time and also costs a little bit more. So while that option does exist as a backup case, but I do not believe it is commonly used. And in general, we kind of require a program to use Fieldprint starting from last year. And so explaining the Fieldprint a little bit, this is kind of quick history, which is become irrelevant a little bit from now. But to go over, so it was a vendor approved by AmeriCorps back in 2015. Because before then, all 50 states have their own FBI checks vendors, and there was a lot of confusions between state. So back in 2015, AmeriCorps has a contract with Fieldprint that does FBI checks, for all states. They kind of slowly improve and revamp the system, and back in 2021, they added the adjudication functions, which is required by the regulations. And once again, and it is currently running, which unfortunately will be going into sunset soon in the end of November. So Fieldprint process, you can for Fieldprint, you instead of requesting a check, or mostly you'll be sending a person to set up an appointment, and the person actually have to be physically going to a location or mail in their fingerprints through a mail card and then get fingerprinted, and then you receive the result after they have reviewed the fingerprints. You can, for your agency, you can set up an account at www.fieldprintcncs.com, set up an account. So once you create it, you receive a Fieldprint code that you'll be giving to your members or your potential hire. And then when they set up the appointments, they can enter the Fieldprint code so that when the result is returned, it will be going to your agency directly or after the live scans and receiving result. So take a look at Fieldprints, how it looks in the system. So this is the result screen. They also include all the activities, from when the appointment is scheduled, when the request was started, and when did they went to the appointment, so if they actually shows up to the appointments. And then finally, you will receive a adjudication result when it says whether clear or not clear. Now, this is one tricky part. It says adjudication result received. That is adjudication by Fieldprint, not adjudication by your agency or your organization. So adjudication result received is a confusing term, but that is not the end of it. Make sure that you actually go into the system and actually adjudicate. You will see a grantee adjudications, which is different from Fieldprint adjudications. So you go in, you hit a pass or not pass, and then they will record your name and the date automatically, based on when you entered. I do believe there will be a new entry after this to show that the grantee has adjudicated in the activities. So,
excuse me, Cooley.
Mhm.
So Tony asked a great question in the chat. Tony asked, does that code ever change or expire?
That code, to the best of my knowledge, do not change or expire. So that code is for the potential candidate to do a live scan. So with that code, the result will be sent to whichever organization that is associated with that code. It's almost so it's kind of like your account ID. No, I shouldn't say account ID. Account ID is also used in a different context, but it is so that they know that scan is linked to your agency, so that you have the access to see it. Do not worry too much, because fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, it's going away very soon. So, and last but not least, the last check, what we refer as the state check. State check has two components. All members that is serving in New York State, by default, they're required to go through a New York State check. And then there are some rare occasion if they apply if they're living out of state while applying to your program, they're required to also go through the state check of the resident states at that point. So let me go through New York State check real quick. Fortunately, the FBI also has a national fingerprint file database that they share the information real time behind the scenes. So when you complete a FBI check from the FBI's, any state that is participating in the NFF is also automatically included. So whilst a New York State check is required, but it is not necessary because it's automatically inclusive, and the FBI check that is required to go through. Now, so at the NFF is slowly expanding. So as of 4 months ago, Arizona also joined the list. So we now have 26 states that is in the NFF state. So so if a member that is living, let's say, in Florida at the time they apply to you to your program, they also do not need to go through the Florida check, because the state check, the FBI checks automatically includes the Florida checks, and all 20 states, the 20 states state check. Uh, you know when you go through the FBI checks. Sorry about that. So yeah, state check is still a requirement. It just simply is automatically included elsewhere when you process it, so you don't have to duplicate a cost. You don't have to pay extra for it. There are some confusion as to so what is considered a out-of-state residence. So just kind of quick information to go through. The candidates where they reside is pretty much at the point of application. So when they submit the application to you, where were they physically living at that moment in time is considered a state of residence. It doesn't matter if they just live there, if they just moved into New York State for 2 days, or even just 5 hours ago. It doesn't matter. It all matters at the point of application. Where were they living, physically living? So that is the definitions of the state of residence. So and when we do monitoring, we also will also ask, so how do you define the state of residence? Using the e-grants address is a common means to answering the questions. But let's say if the e-grants has address that is not in New York State, let's say if a person has a Texas address when they apply to e-grants, then you will have to tell me when we review the profile. You will have to tell me, so how do you determine the person was living in New York State at the time that they applied to you, if New York State was their residency? So you will have to kind of give us some reasonable means to to prove that, instead of just saying the word of mouth. So yeah, so make sure if the person is having a, let's say, an out-of-state driver license, having an out-of-state address on their applications, make sure to do one more extra step to establish their state of residence if it is in the New York State. So make sure there is we can make a reasonable connections, well, the member is living in New York at the time they apply to your programs. For college students applying to serve with enrolled in full-time college is deemed to be residing in the state where they live for the purpose of attending school without regrets, whether that the home is on or off campus, or whether that home is the same state that the college is located. This scenario comes up kind of still pretty rare, because summer term members, mostly just for like a summertime members. Foreign residents, I think I might have encountered one or two during my 6 years here. So for those living abroad, the individual's last state of residency in US, as well as where the program operates, which is New York State, must be checked. So where did the person last live before they left the US? So that will be the state of residence. So once again, the documentations, AmeriCorps does not have specific documentation requirements, but make sure that the information is accurate and logical, so that we can make a reasonable connections. If a person has a driver license of Texas, has a e-grant mailing address of Texas, you tell me it's New York State. So how do we bridge that gap? Let us know. There is a question in chat. So
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Read my mind, Cooley. Go ahead. Sorry. From Gina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So Gina in the chat writes, I have a question. Suppose someone's documents doesn't match their state issued ID.
Mm-hmm.
All documents have the new last name, but the state issued ID has a different last name. When running these checks specifically for TrueScreen, how do we go about that?
Okay, so the good thing about TrueScreen is that when you run TrueScreen, I believe will be the responsibility of TrueScreen to make sure the names are correct. So you are not being legally held responsible for it. But in general, you do because the member is the person going to provide the ID to TrueScreen directly. You will not be providing TrueScreen directly. So for the context of TrueScreen ID check, it is not wouldn't be too stressed about that. But for the purpose of your documentation, let's say the member contracts and everything like that, we still want the member contract to be aligned with their latest legal name, the latest legal name. That should match their government issue ID. Now, if somebody is kind of slacking and haven't really updated driver license, you might really want to ask them to update the driver license. But if there is any name changes, there should always be a government issue documentation to explain when the name change happens. Right.
So Cooley, Gina continues. So there's nothing I would need to do other than having the member sign off with the new last name. As far as checks go, she can submit her ID as it is.
I guess just to clarify the question, when you say some document doesn't match the state issue ID, what documentations do you have in mind? Let me just maybe have a...
And you can take yourself off mute, Gina, if you'd like. That's easier.
Yeah, much easier. Yeah, so like the proof of citizenship, the permanent resident card, everything has her new last name. So 'cause she got married. So as far as like her driver's license go, the state ID that still has her last name. So I guess just trying to navigate like how that would look in the like for TrueScreen, because she signed off on like all the contracts, enrollment forms with her new last name. As far as like the checks go, like I wasn't sure if she would have to like apply for a new ID that represents her new name, or she can submit her ID as it is.
She can submit the resident card as the ID that has the later issue dates on that, right?
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. So don't submit a not up to date government issue ID. I mean, permanent resident card is government issue ID, not state issue, government issue ID, and it has a later issue date. So definitely use that.
Okay.
I'll definitely just kind of keep a documentation as the name change. When the person get married, there's a
Right.
paperwork for name change. Just keep it on file so you can explain, just in case, because if there's anything on your file that use the driver license as the reference, then you can use the name change ID to bridge that gap. To bridge the accurate and make sure the information is logical at that point.
Thank you.
Hey, Cooley, this is Michael. Can I just jump in real quick?
Sure.
Just on this topic, FYI, this is mentioned in the NSCHC manual that AmeriCorps provides. It's on page 12. They talk about name-based checks, and they essentially say that AmeriCorps expects that subgrantees will undertake reasonable due diligence. They list a few different sources that are acceptable for verifying a name, but it says what to do, like if documents reflect different names, just basically document how you determine the actual name. So that there's some of that language in the manual, so I would just refer programs to that also.
Michael, are you looking right at the manual?
Right at it, yeah.
Could you please drop that?
I
in
can
the
put
chat
that.
for us?
Sure. Yeah, I'll put the link
Awesome.
down there. I think this is on page 12, the name-based checks. There's the links in the chat.
Thank you.
And I do believe we have a second question. From Jim, can there be a clawback if the AmeriCorps member misspelled their name, but the background check is complete on the correct hired person, matching the social security number and the birthday? May I ask, when you say AmeriCorps misspelled their name, on which portal or on which platform did they misspell the name?
That's a good question.
I just want to kind of capture on which platform is correct and which platform is incorrect to kind of grasp the scenarios a little bit.
And Jim, you can feel free to take yourself off mute if it's easier. On their application to AmeriCorps.
So, sorry, drilling down a little bit. So is it like is it like an application directly to your agency or in eGrants? Or just, or I guess the eGrants account that has a misspelled name? Okay, apply through AmeriCorps. So
Grants,
chances
yeah.
are, if they apply through the portal, they were asked to create an eGrants account at the point that they submit the application, the application in eGrants. If it is a misspell in eGrants, the only way to handle that, but the only way to handle a misspelled name in eGrant is for the member to call the eGrant hotline and ask them to make the adjustment. eGrant will probably ask them him or her to submit documentation to verify the name was indeed misspelled. But if the misplay happens on eGrants, then unfortunately, calling eGrant help desk is the only options. So, okay, looks like we're just having some question about the link. I think the link is working for me, so that might be on the IT side of things. I'm not but well equipped to troubleshoot, but
Yeah, Liz, try putting it into a Chrome browser.
so
I don't know what type of system you're using. It might be finicky about what type of browser you're using.
So Jim, I don't know if I was able to answer your questions. But if there are further drill downs, just feel free to email your program administrators. Basically, essentially, wherever the misspell happens, we have to identify the platform and then kind of chase down how to resolve it with that platform. If it is a driver license, we work with DMV. If it is somewhere else, we work with whichever platform that had the issue occurs. So NSCHC, resuming on track. Very importantly, the timeliness, it must be adjudicated on at least a day before the members start their service. So let's say if the member is starting today, it has to be at least adjudicated 11:59 p.m. yesterday. So you cannot adjudicate the day off 2 hours before. If it is same day, those are no longer suffice. So must be at least a day before, not 24 hours. Just prior day is fine. So if I adjudicate a member at 10 p.m. today, I forgot, but I caught up, at 10 p.m. today, they can start serving at 9 a.m. tomorrow. No issues.
So Cooley, Jim
Mhm.
writes in the chat. He
Mhm.
he clarifies that
Mhm.
the participant, the applicant, misspelled their name, Michael.
Yeah. So I think if we can probably chat offline on it. Once we identify the misspell happens in eGrant, then we can give you the details for the eGrant hotline. But for personal private information purpose, I think they require that person to call themselves and probably send in an ID to verify that it is indeed a typo. So some common mistakes that we see in criminal background check, timeliness. People just unfortunately either they did not expect the check would take that long, or they forgot to adjudicate. Once again, the check is not complete until you go and adjudicate it. Last year our program has been doing great. I haven't recalled any non-compliance due to timeliness issues from last year. So people are making improvements in terms of adjudication. So that is great. I know it was quite a learning curve from the start of this vendor. Out-of-state residency not verified. Once again, like we said, if there's out-of-state address, out-of-state driver license, help. Let us know how did you come to the logical conclusion that the member had, where the resident sitting is, if it is, if it is not the state that is listed on the driver license, something. Adjudication step, like I said, has been doing great for the last couple of years. There are some non-compliance, but those are usually from the past. And once again, timeliness is critical things. So any other questions on the basic requirements of the NSCHC, TrueScreen, and FieldPrint? And looks like I maybe have another 10 minutes. So I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. There's only like 4 more slides. It's not that bad. So,
Cooley, if I may ask a clarifying question, it's actually something that's on my mind, but I think it'd be
sure.
useful for PDs to hear. So, in the to hear your response in the NSCHC manual, the section on NSCHC compliance, it discusses it all. It bullet points out all the required components that you just covered. It also mentions documentation on having policy and procedures. Now, is that, from your experience, is that something, assuming all the checks are done correctly and they're adjudicated, they're timely, if a program doesn't have written policies and procedures, is that something that they can come easily into compliance with by drafting those policies and procedures? I mean, is there any timing that is taken into consideration for having procedures, these sorts of administrative aspects in place? Yeah.
Understood. So procedure is definitely good to have procedures. It is correct during a site visit monitoring, we also ask for the criminal background check policy, not just the policy, but the procedure. And the procedure includes who does when, at what point, and who does when at what point. So list out all of that from start to finish, to cover the scenarios. It is a requirement granted, non-compliance with missing a policy and procedure does not lead to monitoring findings, disallowance per se. But from the past years I've been working with in this office, this is a personal experience that if you don't have a policy and procedures to follow, whenever the main person that does criminal history check, NSCHC left the agency and then somebody picks it up, you will expect to find non-compliance and disallowance from there. I have never seen a perfect transition case with no documentation in between. So the policy procedure is to cover your agency or your organizations in case if the main person that's responsible for this function, went on to retirements or even just simply take a 2 weeks vacations during onboarding process. It has always, I have never seen a clean transitions with a poorly or non-existent policy and procedure in place. So it is critical to also have policy and procedure that you expect the next person who picks up the task understand how to process it. And I believe we have a few more questions from Jim in terms of how to maneuver in TruScreen and Fieldprint. If the TruScreen and Fieldprint state adjudication status complete, and do the reviewing person need to write the comments adjudicator again? That is not necessary. In TruScreen, when it says adjudication complete, you are good to go. In Fieldprint, I will clarify a little bit because there are 2 possible adjudication. There is the Fieldprint adjudication that does not suffice. The grantee adjudications that suffice. So hopefully, and if it says grantee adjudication complete, that is good. Then you don't need to retype the word adjudicated at that point. Let me say, second question, do we need to have a separate documentation verifying background checks has been adjudicated in TruScreen and Fieldprint? We have one that is called the NSCHC memo, and we check if they pass each check. What ID they provide. It kind of gives you as an extra layer of protection just in case if there for whatever reason, when you hit on the browser, it did not save, you don't have internet connections for, let's say a couple days, that the memo, it is an extra layer of protection, but it's not required. Kind of give you 2 chances to handle the adjudications if the first one mess up for whatever reasons. But if you feel like 100% confidence, you have full control knowledge of TruScreen Fieldprint, then the memo is, it's a nice to have, but not needed. So let me go through the transition a little bit. So we talk about, fingerprint and TrueScreen a little bit, and starting this program year. So TrueScreen and fingerprint, a little behind the scene information is that they are actually the same agency. They are a sister agency. They're owned by the same company. It's just that they start the contract at different times. So therefore, they have two different websites to two different vendors, from the service. But so starting this year, starting December 1st of this year, they are fully migrating fingerprint into TrueScreen. So the requirement didn't change. The big concept of the changes is that they're simply changing from you have to use two different websites to complete a criminal background check. Now you just need to use one website to request both NSOPW and FBI checks. So this is the transition NSCHC approved vendor transitions. So I think AmeriCorps worked it out with TrueScreen fingerprint start in January of this year, and just want to kind of go over how it might impact you, because to the best of my knowledge, some of you, if not all of you, that has a fingerprint account should have received an email from them already that the transition has already started. Give me one moment. Quick question, quick thing. So AmeriCorps will be sending email notice to authorized representative and project director on the record for e-grants. And so most of you should be receiving emails that, to the best of my knowledge, they sent it out last week already. If not, I will say, reach out to your PA in the commission's office for more information. TrueScreen also emailed the primary contact on all the TrueScreen account to sign a new user agreement. So the user agreements to include the functions of fingerprints to perform the API checks. So I don't know if anyone can type in chat if they have gotten this email, because my understanding is sent out last week for one who has a current account in TrueScreen. Yep. Yeah, so you should have. So for those of you that have not received any emails, I will say definitely check in with requester@truescreen.com, because chances are the primary account holder of your TrueScreen might be the staff before you, and then they never get updated. So it went to an email address that is no longer in use. So definitely check in with your commission program administrator or with TrueScreen directly if you have not gotten an email and you know that you have a TrueScreen fingerprint account. To provide some timelines of this whole transitions. So like I said earlier, we already started transitions. So you program should be able to request an FBI checks in fingerprint starting early of this month. Which when you go into TrueScreen and when you request a check, you have to select NSOPW and then the FBI check. You can also there's also drop down for any other state check, but as long as that program is under the NFF, that check will not be necessary. So August 14, I think it was last week, it was the last day to create a fingerprint account. So if you are new programs and you for this year, chances are you will no longer be able to create a fingerprint account. So what we kind of went over is only for program that's in that you set up two weeks ago. So between now until the end of November, you are able to perform the FBI check in both TrueScreen and fingerprint. So this is a transition period until the end of November 30th. That the FBI check function is available in both fingerprint and TrueScreen. You can do it on either options. It will still be considered compliant. However, all the fingerprints, whether it is mail-in card or either the fingerprint appointments, has to be received by November 30th, because that is the last date that they will be accepting any fingerprints, not adjudications. The adjudication still goes on for a little bit. The price will remains exactly the same. Eric, we have a question from the chat. Is fingerprint changing the price? No, it's going to stay at $28.75.
Eric, Bell points out that it's cheaper to do it solely in TrueScreen.
No, it will be exactly the same price. The price remains the same. So most of the check should be the NSOPW 750 plus the $28.75 of IPI checks, which was just about $36 and a quarter for most folks, unless they require out-of-state check. So, and once once December 1st hit, you will no longer be able to schedule any appointments. Or even if they mail in the card, if they receive on or after December 1st, they will no longer be accepting the fingerprints. So and then any check that is complete on or before that, you can still adjudicate them. The last day to adjudicate them is April 30th, and after that, you will not even be able to adjudicate any non-adjudicated FBI checks and fingerprints. So those are kind of the timelines.
Cooley asked another. I'm sorry, Cooley. Tony asked another question in the chat.
Mhm.
Before November 30th, does that mean all fingerprint results must be in, or members have to have it done, but the results may not have come back yet?
If I understand the transition menu correctly, they must receive the fingerprints. So by receiving them, which means they get the mailing card in the mail, or the fingerprints appointments has to be done on or before November 30th. So, and usually it takes about 2-3 days to get the result. That's the processing time on their ends. That is fine, but they need to receive the fingerprint by November 30th. Now, with the transition, there are a couple recommendations I have. First of all, because you can request FBI checks in both TrueScreen and Fingerprint right now, start migrating to TrueScreen as early as possible. Just in case of any technical issue arise, we can help you guide to troubleshoot to the best we can. The 3 months transition period is meant to troubleshoot any issues. Save any necessary information from fingerprints before the end of this year, just in case if you need to access it in the future. So, for example, if I'm the only person that have access to fingerprint result in the commission's office, and I hit a lotto tomorrow, and you guys won't see me next week anymore. Well, nobody have access to the fingerprint information anymore, and it will be quite a hassle to kind of go get them. So definitely download any information that is necessary for you. Now I would not recommend download each and individual checks per se, because if there's a program that is years in running, it might be a long list. Instead, in Fingerprint, there is a function to just download the entire report that is as good as download individual check, and you only keep it one Excel file. And you have all the information you need to respond to any monitoring at that point. So that is, downloading a report at the end of this year is something that I'll recommend, and kind of keep it on file just in case if, monitoring does happen. And AmeriCorps is also providing a training in terms of this vendor transitions that is happening on next week on August 20th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. Let me post the link in the chat. Meanwhile, this is also a QR code. Oh, actually, Michael already got it from me. Thank you. Or if you're fancy and want to sign up on your phone, there's also a QR code just in case. So those are some recommendations. Step is transition, do the transition early, troubleshoot any issue, and save any information as a backup. Just save the Excel report. You don't have to save each individual fingerprint result. So that's with the transitions. And there are one final, back to criminal NSCHC a little bit. There is also a quarterly NSCHC tour for new recipient staff. This is a presentation hosted by AmeriCorps Office of Monitoring staff. They are kind of go over the same thing that I just went over. So if I went too fast, or if there's things that I'm not clear, or if you want to simply hear similar information in a different voice, they are hosting a training again today. Yes, today at 2 to 3 p.m. later today. So And the other training is that all agencies require to have at least one staff on their agency to complete the NSCHC e-course training. It is in a platform called Litmos that is hosted by AmeriCorps. So at least each agency needs to have at least one staff complete their training on an annual basis. So those are the 2 required items. So any questions? Feel free to ask. Meanwhile, I'm trying to see if I can pull up a pool. I have 2 simple questions that I want to ask, everyone here. Let me see. Where is panels? Manage panels.
View. Go up to view. Cool.
View.
Panels. It's like in the middle, and then manage panels.
Yeah, let me stop sharing. Then I know how to pull up the pool. Sorry about that. SPC. So the first question before I pull it up is open pool. Do you know who is your current holder for the annual required e-course, and do you know when it will expire? Because if you do not know, it is a good time to look it up after this training session, just to make sure there is somebody on your agency that is meeting the requirements, because otherwise it will be deemed non-compliance. And second question is that, do you know if your organization's TrueScreen account is mapped to the New York State pool file? Could be yes, no, or you're not too sure. So 2 simple questions. And afterward, we're gonna have, as am I understanding, we're gonna have a little break, little fun activities. Okay,
That's
and
correct.
then
We're going to give folks a little time to complete this poll, and then we're going to jump into a great activity that Casey's prepared for us. So we're just going to give you there's 2 more minutes remaining for the poll.
and I don't know if you need to start a new recording sections at this point.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
We'll stop this one here.